Okay, so I've written my revision, and I am, like before, I'm keeping my rubric handy so that I can refer back to it and make sure that I am meeting the excellent or at least the good standards for my writing. And I've kind of done this a little bit differently than how yours will be because I want to show you the changes. First, you're not going to do the highlighting and you're not going to do leaving things in parentheses, but I did that so we could remember how the writing originally was, and how I worked to make it better. First, I highlighted the transition and these sequence words so that I could make sure that I had enough included to get me up to the top ranges of the rubric. I want to make sure I include those, so I highlighted them just for my own purpose, and I can just delete the highlighting later, not the words, but the highlighting, to make sure that I've done that and to have my published copy look right. So I'm going to read it and I'm going to explain what's in the parentheses are the parts that I have taken out and replaced with these other things. So you can see that, but when I read it, I'm going to skip over because what I have without the parentheses is my new revision. This is what was in before I did my revision. Make sense? Okay. When I was a kid, my age still somewhere in the single digits, I really wanted to go fishing with my dad. My dad really wanted to take my brother. My brother had no interest whatsoever in fishing. You see how that's more interesting and detailed? Had no interest whatsoever compared to didn't want to go. So I've made this idea a little bit better and a little bit more vivid. I remember one instance specifically where my dad was telling my brother he needed to be up very early to leave with the boat on a fishing trip. And this little caret is where I've inserted something that I added to make the writing a little bit more detailed and descriptive. I'm sure it was supposed to be a father-son bonding or something. The next morning I woke up about an hour earlier and was ready and waiting in the boat when my dad came outside. He said he wouldn't take me, my brother was going. I informed him that my brother was still in bed and not interested. My dad isn't a very talkative guy, but his body language told me I still wasn't going. The only question was how to justify it. Then my mom came outside. The only things I heard were, "Can I talk to you now?" And a little later my dad, "Well, you're not riding to the lake in the back of the boat. Get in the truck." And notice I didn't change the quotes because that's what somebody else said and I'm not going to change that. Later, out on the lake, my dad made me skewer the poor little worm on the hook. It squirmed as much as I had when I realized I was going to take this trip, but I doubt we had the same emotions. And showed me how to cast the rod and he had bought from my brother out into the water. For the first hour or so I was very attentive, watching the line and scanning the water looking for fish. And do you see how before I had watching twice, so I changed the first watchful to attentive? I think that's better writing for this. After that, I was a little more worried about sunburn. After that, I was relaxing in the middle of a sun-warmed lethargy. Wow, there's a good word. Sometime later, my pole literally bent almost to touch the water. Holy wow, I had no idea what to do. Or maybe at some point I did know what to do, but that was all gone from my mind now. I jumped up and stared out into the water, leaving the pole propped as it had been. As the rod bent and jerked, my dad scolded me. "Get the pole, what are you doing? Reel it in." I did, and I tried. It's been at least 30 years, and I still remember this as one of the hardest things I've done physically. I remember thinking, I didn't know this lake had sharks. I had heard that cows had been found drowned in the lake. Maybe I had snagged a cow. Okay, it wasn't a shark or a cow. But to my little arms and untrained efforts, it may as well have been. I pulled and I reeled, and I'm pretty sure the fish pulled out more line than I reeled in for quite a while. My hands got cuts, my palms blistered, my arms ached, and my back begged me to stop. You see how that's much more descriptive than what I had written before? So that's what I'm trying to do as I do my revision. I'm not changing spelling or anything, I'm just changing my ideas to make them more excellent. The whole time my dad sat in his seat in the boat giving directions such as pull, now let him have it, then reel and pull the rod again. While I shouted, I need your help, it's too big, it's going to break the pole. I'm going to get dragged into the water. None of these fazed my father in the slightest. You caught it, you haul it in. If someone told me it took only 10 minutes to get that fish in the boat, I would have called them a liar. If someone said it took me 2 hours, I would believe them. I have no idea how long the battle raged between me and the brutish fish, but I eventually got it up to the side of the boat. The fish was at least as long as my torso. My dad held it up and said, it's no good. You got a catfish. While part of me had been gleefully thinking of my fish being dinner, overall I was okay with this because it meant we didn't have to kill it. Though I now worried about the hole in my hook had left in my adversary's mouth, I was pretty sure he was tough enough to survive the experience. He might even brag to the other fish about and show the hole as proof of his toughness. We spent some time searching the boat for a camera to provide proof of my success and found none. Now I wanted to talk about this a little bit because I had this sentence in here before. We looked for a camera to take a picture, but we couldn't find one. This leaves an inference about how it relates to the paragraph because it's kind of, otherwise if I'm not clear, we're not sure how this sentence relates to the paragraph about getting the fish. But since I added in this piece to provide proof of my success, that shows, I'm trying to explain by adding this in that the reason we're looking for the camera is to show that I had been successful catching a fish, since we were going to have to put the fish back in the water. And so that helps to clarify why this sentence is relevant to this paragraph. I wanted to touch on that. We removed the hook and released the mighty catfish back into the water. I bade farewell to my worthy opponent. My dad caught no fish that day, and I spent much of the remaining time gloating inwardly over my catch, even though I had no proof of the accomplishment. As we cleaned out the boat before loading it back on the trailer, my dad opened the glove box and the camera practically jumped out into his hand. Now I've changed my whole conclusion paragraph, so this is all gone now. In some ways, this story reflects a good chunk of my life so far. I wanted something very much, worked so hard to accomplish it, straining first against my dad and then the fish. And in the end, what I got out of it was something very different than what I expected at the time. The fish didn't feed us, and I didn't even have a picture to show for the effort. I don't think I ever went fishing again after that either. I had an experience I will remember for the rest of my life, though. I guess that's what life is really all about anyway. Experiences you'll never forget. So I think that is a better paragraph, especially considering my rubric, which says a clear concluding paragraph directly related to the information, and it also has a strong personal message. So the conclusion is a good place to address this part of the rubric as well. So there's my revised essay, and you can see the changes I made. This is available in Google Docs as well. And I think you basically understand spelling and grammar rules, and you'll be able to notice if you read your story out loud or you ask somebody else to read it for you, you should be able to go through and fix the spelling and grammar. So I'm not going to do a video about that, and I think this will probably be the last one. I've included on the Google Doc a published copy that does not have these changes in with the parentheses and the highlights, because this is what your final draft should look like. So you have access to this in Google Classroom, and this can be a resource for you as you're writing your own. So we've done steps down to 4, and I believe you will be able to handle the grammar and spelling editing as you continue through. So thanks for watching, and get started on your personal narrative. Remember your topic? Write about a meaningful experience you've had.